Hello, my name's Andy Biggs, Chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. We're here today to discuss a couple of very important issues. We've got with us, joining me today is Senator Mike Lee from Utah, great state of Utah, Alex Mooney from West Virginia, Lauren Boebert from Colorado, and Louis Gohmert from Texas. And we're glad you would join us as well. We've got two topics that we think are just so important to the freedom or the continuing freedom of this country. First of all, is the mandate on vaccinations that the Biden administration is attempting to impose upon every American. And then secondly, is this massive spending bill. Nobody can really tell us how much money is in there, but there's a lot. And a lot of bad policy that will endure long beyond the ramifications of the spending. But first, let's talk about Senator Lee. You've got a great idea on how to maybe slow down the vax mandate. Tell us a little bit about it, please.
Yeah. Andy, it's important to remember that the federal government doesn't have the power to impose a vaccine mandate on the general population. It just doesn't have the power at all. Even if we did, which we don't, certainly the President of the United States acting unilaterally may not do this. And there's no statute, there's no provision of the Constitution that suggests otherwise. So he doesn't have the power to do this. So the question is, what can we do about it? Well, every part of the government, including OSHA, the agency that we expect to be in charge of enforcing the mandate, relies on funding from the federal government. And that funding has to come through Congress. No agency can appropriate its own funds. We have to do that for them. We're going to have a chance in early December to fund or not fund the government. We've already got a bill filed as an amendment to the last continuing resolution, the last big spending bill by Congress a few weeks ago. Roger Marshall, the senator from Kansas, introduced this great amendment to the last spending bill saying, we don't allow you to spend any money, devote any resources within OSHA or the Department of Labor on enforcing a vaccine mandate. All 50 Republicans voted for it. Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia initially voted for it and then changed his vote to no at the last minute, showing that there are cracks of support there. And the vaccine mandate has become even more unpopular since then. So we're pushing to have the Marshall Amendment come up again in connection with the next spending bill, encouraging every Republican to insist on it. We have no business funding OSHA or the Department of Labor without a requirement that they must not, they cannot, will not be allowed under law to enforce the vaccine mandate.
It's really a clever procedural move that I'm hoping it works. Alex, comment.
Well, as a West Virginian, I think they love freedom in our state, and I'll have to encourage my constituents to contact Senator Manchin and keep with his first vote. If you get 51 votes, you solve it. I hear this a lot, both from federal employees, some of which are in my district, afraid of losing their jobs if they have a vaccination mandate that violates their conscience or, frankly, even their health needs. Mm-hmm. So it's a great concern. I'm glad to hear the senator point out that government doesn't have a right to do that. We actually have to authorize that. Mm-hmm. There's too much fear and belief that the government can just tell you what to do, and they don't have that right. And so we're at a point now where a lot of folks are, for various reasons that are justifiable, not wanting to get vaccinated, and they don't want to be punished for it, and we need to protect them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lauren, tell us about your district and then how Senator Lee's plan might work.
I think this is brilliant. First of all, it's a pleasure to see us moving from defund the police to defund the government. Because this is really where we're at. Democrats were shouting in the streets to defund police, so we wouldn't have a way to protect ourselves. But this actually makes sense. Defund Department of Labor and OSHA if they don't reverse this, and if they put in these mandates. I have people all throughout my district coming to me on a regular basis saying, what am I going to do? Police officers, people who work for the federal government, contractors through the federal government, asking me on a regular basis, what am I going to do? They're saying they're giving me a choice, but I don't have a choice. I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. And so I'm so glad that we actually have a tool here, a procedural tool to stop this. Parents have been standing up against schools, even though Attorney General Garland would label them domestic terrorists. But they have been taking a stand. We have seen airline workers with Southwest Airlines, with United Airlines. We're even seeing In-N-Out Burger taking a stand against these mandates. And now we here in Congress can do something to stand up for Americans as well. So I love this amendment, and I love the direction that we're going.
Louis.
to you.
Well, I think one of the greatest developments in medical science and and healthcare actually was what's called informed consent, and that is the doctrine by which before a physician or healthcare provider can do a procedure, you must be advised, normally in writing, of all the risks inherent to that procedure, and then get your informed consent so they can go forward. This just blows right past that. They don't, President Biden doesn't know you, doesn't know your physical abnormalities or quirks or different things. And I've had a couple of constituents tell me of family members that got the vaccination and then died. And when they were opened up, they were full of blood clots, which is one of the risks. Well, you ought to be able to consult with your physician about the different risks of the different vaccine and make your decision. But as we were talking, one of the things occurred to me, having been in the Army and we were told we should get flu shots. My last year I didn't, but and was better off. But what about enforcement in the military? We have been losing military people, and my office, I'm sure y'all's offices have been hearing from people in the military saying, we've been ordered to take this drug, take the vaccination, and we know from what happened after the horrendous Tuskegee experiments, I've got to look back, but I was under the impression a law was passed that prevented the military from ever having anybody take experimental drugs against their will. And until the Pfizer vaccine comes out next year that's been approved, these are experimental drugs. So I'm wondering if the government's even entitled to order military people to take an experimental or emergency use authorization.
Yeah, I learned of this argument for the first time just in the last few days. It is an interesting, potentially very promising theory. The president's authority from a constitutional standpoint is much stronger generally when it comes to directives for members of the armed services. If there's a statute on that prohibits that might be an important hook. But even if that were not the case, I think for prudential reasons, the president certainly ought to allow exemptions for military personnel who have a good faith medical concern or a sincerely held religious or other personal belief that would stop them from doing this or something like that. So I think that one is worth exploring as well. And I've got a separate piece of legislation. I've been going to the Senate floor every day that we've been in session, offering up different pieces of legislation, one creating a religious exemption, one creating an exemption for people with medical conditions or natural immunity, another designed to protect our armed services personnel, and I think we ought to do that. The really nasty thing about all this really is the most egregious act of presidential overreach that we've seen since the 1950s when Harry Truman unilaterally seized every steel mill in America to support the Korean War effort. The Supreme Court smacked him down appropriately. He doesn't have the power to do that. People always ask me, why can't the courts just do that here? Well, I think in time they will. The problem is they can't act now because there's not even a mandate in effect. Right. He hasn't had the decency to give us the document, so we don't know what his theory is. There's nothing to enjoin for the courts. President Biden is using corporate America to do his dirty work for him. They're then going out under the threat of eventually being fined. They're adopting really aggressive policies. They're firing people. Often what they do is put them on unpaid administrative leave so they can't even get unemployment. Yes. This is disgraceful. It's immoral to tell hardworking mom or dad, you're not going to be able to provide bread on your table for your children if you don't do what we say.
And so, Mike,
Mike, you're 100% correct. And as you've come up with this really appropriate response legislatively, because a lot of times our hands are tied because we don't have police power. We're the executive, we're the legislative branch. What can the American people, anybody who's watching today or who will watch this in the future, what can they do to move the ball forward, help you move the ball forward on your legislative plan?
Tell your members of Congress, especially your senators, support the Marshall Amendment. Don't fund that part of government, any part of government, charged with enforcing the Biden vaccine mandate. Don't do it. Now, and this call goes out to everyone, regardless of how they feel about the vaccine. Look, I'm for the vaccine. I got the vaccine. Some are calling it the Trump vaccine. Call it whatever you want. I think it's a great development. It's a medical miracle of some sort. That doesn't mean government has any business mandating it. I think it's generally safe for most people, but it's not the federal government's position to tell people they've got to choose between working and providing for their family or getting medical treatment that they may not want.
Yeah, it is overreach. And I'll just make a comment before I get to you, Louis. When you said this is the most egregious since the 1950s, I view this as the tip of the point of the spear in a fascist state, because what's happening is this move to get the private sector, before we actually even see an official mandate, you're saying to the private sector, you have to impose this, and they're responding. And that nothing can be more clearly tyrannical than to get the private sector to compel you to do something at the risk of losing your livelihood and your means of support and the way you live.
So responding out of fear based on future threatened action.
Right.
Action that happens to be unconstitutional.
That's right.
That's not acceptable.
That's right. Louis.
Well, I was out to add to what you guys were saying. I was told by a state representative that if you have a private employer in Texas mandate that you get the vaccination or you're fired, and you get the vaccination and you're disabled or even killed, because that is happening, you're not even covered by workers' comp. The insurance is not covering them. I mean, how horrible is that? You're not even covered if you comply to keep your employment and you're disabled.
Yeah. Mike, Senator Lee, thanks for
Thank
being
you,
here.
Senator.
Thanks for your
Thank you very
plan.
much.
I know you got to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
No, Louis, you raise another issue. We'll cover that some more at another time. Let's segue into this because Senator Lee's talking about using funding to maybe stop a bad policy program. We know that our colleagues across the aisle, they want to use the continuing resolution, a short-term spending resolution, massive amounts of money. Now we're joined by Scott Perry of Pennsylvania.
Great to be in the
Yeah,
conversation.
Mike Lee warmed up the chair for you, Scott. You got big shoes to fill. There's big chair to fill there, partner.
No doubt about it. Employers are looking at $70,000 per day per incident for not complying on an order that hasn't been written. OSHA doesn't have it. It's an OMB, the Office of Management and Budget right now. And people are literally in America having to choose between their livelihood and taking, getting the jab. And look, if you want to get the vaccine, God bless you. This is America. If you don't, God bless you. This is America.
Yes.
But you shouldn't have to make that choice. And this is something unprecedented. The federal government, people will say, well, vaccines have been mandated before, so what's your problem? Never has it been done by the federal government. And I would just encourage anybody to tell me where the long-term study, the study of the long-term effects, not like every other vaccine that we have, but for this one in particular, where are those where are those results? And so for individual citizens who want to make their own personal decision about their own personal health, and the fact that you cannot get a doctor's exemption, whether you've already had the virus, whether you've already had it, or whether your doctor's telling you you should not take the vaccine because it might damage you physically, your health might damage you. Keep in mind, everybody listening and watching, you can't sue vaccination companies, right? There's a law. You can't. So we're forcing you to take it, or you can't earn a living. And if it damages you, you have absolutely zero recourse. That's unbelievable in America.
Right.
Yeah, so you've got the people will not be held to bear. I mean, the recourse is through the fund that we provide, but it is not sufficient, and nor is it sufficient to cause curative impacts. That's what lawsuits do. They provide curatives. So Scott, thanks. So Senator Lee was briefing us on a plan dealing with the budget and how to slow this thing down. And we see on the other side, the Democrats, they are trying to use the budget to impose not just the spending. I mean, that's bad enough, but massive amounts of programs that will continue on long after whatever that spending number is. And you've had Jamie Raskin said about 10 days ago, he said, yeah, we'll pare the spending down, but we'll keep the programs. We're going to keep all the programs there. Manchin negotiating with Schumer and Jayapal apparently. They're also talking about reducing spending, but keeping the programs there. Alex, for a second, tell us about the programmatic problems with the CR. We'll just call it the CR, which is the short-term term for the short-term spending bill.
I did spend my first 2 years on the budget committee here. It was great to learn that process from the inside. Yeah. The Constitution does say all spending and taxation must derive from the House of Representatives. That's us. Everybody in this country, Republican or Democrat, has a right for their elected representatives to decide how their money is spent, their tax dollars are spent. That has to be appropriated. Before it's actually spent, you're also supposed to authorize how it's spent, because the executive doesn't make the laws. We make the laws here. So that's the process. Authorize, then spend. What they're trying to do in this bill is put it all in one big bill. Forget the authorizing. Just spend it on universal pre-K or spend it on the Green New Deal. Just spend it. Those programs have not yet been authorized. That's legislative policy. That's supposed to go through the House and the Senate separately. Then you fund it through the appropriations process. We've gotten away from that lately, and it's just being abused terribly in this bill. There's no balanced budget to it. It is one of the most outrageous pieces of legislation this country's ever seen, for sure. And they're trying to make policy changes that are not appropriate. They can ram it through and using this budget reconciliation trick. It goes to the Senate. The Senate still has a filibuster rule over there, so we'll see what the Senate will do. But in this chamber, they're paying no attention to how laws are supposed to be made, and they're just trying to ram through. They're calling it human infrastructure. It's supposed to be infrastructure bill, roads and bridges. They're redefining what that means. Right. You have broadband, okay, that's acceptable, but then they're adding just social programs that are supposed to go through a different authorization process. So it's really an outrageous piece of legislation. When you're watching this, I don't even care what your political views are. You deserve a process that's fair to you. You deserve all 435. Well, all 435 members of the House of Representatives should vote on these policies separately.
That's right.
Right, separately.
So I mean, the process is gone a mess. It's gone awry and off the rails completely. And as a result, you mentioned that they're using it programmatically. And so, Lauren, have you looked at this? Have you seen some of the programs that they're trying to foist upon the American people? By the way, the reason that the programs are so bad is when the spending's gone, it's too late if you've got the program, because now you have beneficiaries who become constituents, and they're never going to cut a program. I mean, Ronald Reagan said the closest thing to immortality in this life is a government program. So, Lauren, what have you found?
Well, gosh, I mean, first to start off, the Democrats, they're really good at spending. That's what they want to do. They want to spend your money. They don't care how they do it. That's what they want. I mean, we're looking at nearly $7 trillion. But what does that even mean anymore? Because they might cut it down to $5 trillion. And then you're like, oh, well, that's not so bad because it's not $7 trillion anymore. It's just 5. But Democrats don't understand what it means to run a business efficiently. They don't know how to create jobs. So instead, they pass legislation for a $7.5 billion civilian climate corps and say, we're creating jobs, but it's really just ushering in their Green New Deal scheme. In this legislation, I serve in the Budget Committee, and I had an amendment to remove a $200 million earmark for the Presidio in San Francisco. This is a fancy elite park in Nancy Pelosi's district. And a colleague from the other side of the aisle, from Tennessee, the gentleman who is the chairman of the Bad Hair Caucus, he piped up and he said, sure, the speaker may have a little bit extra in this bill, but she deserves it. No member of Congress deserves extra in a bill. This was really
money.
That's right.
No members of Congress deserve any of it. They're speaking on behalf of taxpayers' hard-earned money.
That's exactly right.
I mean, shouldn't we at least debate whether we're going to hire tens of thousands of more IRS agents? Shouldn't we at least debate it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. And these bureaucrat bullies are going to be managing the bank accounts that have less than $10,000 in them. $600 transactions or higher will be monitored now by these new thousands and thousands of IRS bureaucrat bullies. And so there's just so much in here that is absolutely absurd. There's amnesty, about $100 billion that goes to their welfare and even their college education for illegal aliens coming into our country.
So when you say amnesty, so Louis, you know a little bit about amnesty.
Yes.
We do.
Yeah.
You do.
I do as well, but I think a lot of people aren't really comprehending what we're talking about amnesty here. I mean, Lauren talked about $100 billion attached to that program. It's not even a program. It's amnesty. Tell us about what amnesty means for the United States.
You've got to take it in context. The New York Post just had a story in the last couple of days. They broke the news that there have been hundreds of flights of this administration flying people up, children, minors, up to New York. We don't know all the other places around the country they've been flying them.
Certainly
but
not
that
Martha's
is
Vineyard.
that is a form of where amnesty starts. You're instead of just saying go away to Mexico, which President Trump had negotiated, you're saying we're going to ship you where the drug cartels want you to go to work. And when somebody recently had said that, it was Tom Holman, he was saying that 42% of the people they arrested for criminal acts here in the U.S. as adults came over as unaccompanied minors, as children. But if you're not accompanied, then the odds are probably 42%. You're going to be used by the drug cartels, sex trafficking, drug trafficking. This is horrendous. And this administration now is complicit in that. They are accomplices under most law, including federal and all the states
Louis,
I'm
not only
familiar.
the administration is complicit in breaking the law, actively breaking the law by your tax dollars, by the tax dollars that you're sending in, forced to send in under penalty of law. Citizens are complicit in human trafficking of minors.
Yes.
But Louis, you said something about stay in Mexico. I think you need to be really clear about what that means and why that's important, because it sounds mean-spirited. First of all, not everybody is Mexican, right? They're coming through Mexico. But what do you mean when you say stay in? What does that mean?
That was what was negotiated before you're allowed to come into the United States. You make your claim for asylum, and then
But
you
why
come
is it
for
that
the
way?
hearing.
But why, when you say it was negotiated, why is it that way?
Because they're coming from Mexico.
Because
When
it's
they've come-
international law that
Yeah.
you seek asylum in the
In the
first
first
free
place you
country
come to.
that you come to, not that you use other countries to get to the country you desire to
that's
be
US
in.
law as
That's
well.
U.S. So that's important for people to know. This is not a policy that's mean-spirited for the sake of being mean-spirited. We have a process here to protect America and people that want to come to America or seek asylum outside of the oppressive place where they are. We have a process. What we're simply asking on behalf of the American people is follow the process.
And it was working well, too.
Yeah, it was working well. It was integral to slowing down the flow. But I mean, Title VIII, for instance, which is federal law, says that you have to be detained while you're awaiting your asylum claim, the due process for your asylum. We weren't doing that. We were catching and releasing. We're now catching and releasing again. And it gets to this point of $100 billion in this spending bill that goes to amnesty. Now, what amnesty means is you've stolen into the country. You've snuck in. You've been here a week. You've been here 8 months. Maybe you've been here 8 years.
You jumped in front of the
You
line.
jumped in front of the line. We have millions of people trying to get in. In a couple of years ago, we swore in 830,000 new U.S. citizens, and we're pretty consistent, 800 to 830,000.
Nobody else comes close.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, by far the most. But what amnesty does is we say, if you've come in illegally, we're going to forgive you completely,
Right.
and we'll put you on a path to obtain citizenship.
Yes.
And the estimate is 8 to 10 million people under this provision will become U.S. citizens who've been here illegally. And so,
in this bill. I mean, this is an
Right.
issue that doesn't belong in a
Right.
spending bill.
yes,
That's the
Alex,
point. This is just one of many, many things they're trying to slip into a spending bill.
The Senate parliamentarian says it does not meet the standard. Again, we have standards, we have rules and laws for a reason. If we're not going to follow them, well, let us all know. But there are rules for a reason, and the Senate parliamentarian said that doesn't belong in the bill. But they just keep saying, well, it's going to be part of the bill. We're going to do it anyhow.
we'll see how it plays. How about this one? They want to provide pre-K 20 education for free.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's not free.
well, no. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, excuse me. Well, yeah.
Well, I know President Biden said none of this costs anything. Right?
Yeah, he
Did say that.
Trillions of dollars.
Yeah, but it becomes a program, right? And you know, child care and all of this that is going to be ostensibly free to somebody, but it won't be free actually even to that person, because
Right.
sooner or later the bill comes due. But you're going to create these constituencies, these beneficiaries of these programs, and how do they go away? I mean, what have you ever seen one go away?
Program.
No.
Name one program Congress has ever taken
Didn't
away.
repeal Obamacare yet. But, you know, the education, again, we have an education committee here. Most education policy is done at the local level, literally at your county level, and then if maybe some from the state level. Very little education policy is done at the federal level.
Where
So
is
to
it
put something like that,
constitutionally, where
And actually,
Yeah.
that
Haven't found
didn't
it yet.
occur until '79
Right.
when Jimmy Carter created the Department of Education, because, as y'all know, the 10th Amendment says any power not specifically listed is reserved to the states and people. I'd noticed on a local school district that they were saying we were proud that 50% of the employees are teachers, and I thought, that is so low. So I had my staff get with Texas Education Agency, get the data. It turns out the year the Department of Education was created by Jimmy Carter, it was right at 3/4 of the employees in education in Texas were teachers. But once the federal government got involved, that has dropped to 50%, because we got all these administrators, all these new people in the system.
the costs have gone up, but the
That-
teaching
the teaching
gone
is-
down.
Comply.
That's right.
Got to comply. So, Alex, you were talking about the local versus federal level too. Expand on that a little bit. I mean, here's an example. If you're going to send a kid to an Ivy League school, in this bill, you're going to get a tax break.
Yes.
And I think that the number is $7.5 billion. Talk about that. I mean, how does that square where we're paying for further
You're gonna punch the
indoctrination?
rich. So go ahead, Alex.
Well.
Tell us how it's going to happen.
I mean, we've just gotten so far away from how you're supposed to even debate these issues is the problem. I mean, federal government they're trying to push a one-size-fits-all education policy. The needs of rural West Virginia is different than New York City. You know, we have community colleges are more prevalent these days. And our state passed a community college for certain vocations, a free community college bill. We did that at the state level. We don't need the federal government to come in and dictate how we fund our colleges or don't fund our colleges. So it's just outside the purview of a transportation bill. These are important issues that we should all talk about and work together on, like work both ways. I think what a lot of folks don't realize is Republicans do want to work with Democrats, but we don't have a two-way street here.
Right,
They just
no,
want to
not at
pass everything they want and override our votes, not even consider our point of view or maybe even compromise anything. So, go ahead.
Well, with this infrastructure, we do want to work with Democrats to actually pass some real infrastructure. I have an infrastructure bill. I have a piece of legislation. It's the American Infrastructure Modernization Act, the AIM Act, and it takes $650 billion of the unspent COVID money that's already approved by Congress and
You
not
need to say
allocated.
unspent.
Unspent.
Again, it's sitting there.
It's sitting there. Near
now.
$1 trillion.
Right now, right, Laura?
Yes,
Right now.
right now it's there. And you take $650 billion of that.
and fund actual infrastructure, not this progressive wish list that we're seeing in their infrastructure bill, in their human infrastructure bill, in the budget reconciliation. We have an alternative. We're not just rubber stamping no. We have an alternative to say work with us. But are there any Democrats co-sponsored on my bill? No. And we're seeing all of these crises take place. And we just came out of the Republican conference meeting for the week, and it's so frustrating because we have an employment crisis, we have an energy crisis, we have a southern border crisis, we have an inflation crisis, we have a supply chain crisis happening right now with more than 100 cargo ships out in the ocean sitting there.
Don't forget the inflation crisis.
I said that. Yes. You're only catching about 90% of what I'm saying today, Louis. But we have all of these crises taking place, and there's no legislation coming to the floor this week for us to actually address any of the real problems that are taking place. There's nothing that says Mayor Pete has to get out of his home, get out for the paternity leave, and get to work to solve this crisis. Listen, I have 4 boys. I know all about maternity leave, and I know that you don't need more than 2 months on it. That's for sure. I had a darn baby in the truck. You got things to do. You got to get this rolling. But as we read in the Washington Post this week, Americans should lower their expectations. So maybe when we get to Congress here, we should just have lower expectations because we're not going to address any of this and solve it.
So here's just a couple things, and I'd like your response to these, because you mentioned the infrastructure and actually doing something real with infrastructure. Mm-hmm. But both the bills, and we tend to conflate these things, the infrastructure bill, the short-term spending bill, because the Democrats have now tied these together, right? I mean, they've put them together, and it's literally trillions of dollars. Nobody can tell you how much. But here's a few things that should brighten your day. $2 billion to job train people who are going to be in a climate change career. Mm-hmm. We want to give them specific assistance and training for that. $5 billion for environmental justice tax credits. Think about that. I mean, and then you got $42 billion in tax credits so you can purchase electric vehicles. Mm-hmm. And since an electric vehicle like, a Tesla, is $80,000 to $120,000, somewhere like that. Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem to me like that's trickling down to the lower and middle classes. That's something for the elite to get hold of.
Most of my constituents can't afford a $100,000, $120,000 vehicle, which, oh, by the way, those same constituents that can't afford it now are already subsidizing the production of the vehicle, and through their taxes are also subsidizing China to build the batteries, right? Yes. They're also subsidizing slave labor and child slave labor for the materials for the battery. They're already doing it, yet the ultimate slap in the face is not, they have to pay for the car, right? They're essentially paying for it in their taxes by subsidizing it. They can't afford to buy it, and the additional subsidy goes to the wealthy people that can afford it.
Yes.
I mean, it's an insult upon injury.
Yes. And at those charging stations, I have yet to see a credit card reader. So that's a subsidy too.
Well, they want to use taxes to control policy. So just as, environmental justice versus look at climate change. What about doing that for coal, clean coal, which we have? Why not, do that for other things? It's whatever they think is politically correct. Mm-hmm. They want to discriminate against coal because they don't like it, and give a tax credit for a different type of energy. Mm-hmm. That's just not fair. Yeah. You should treat everybody fair. All we're asking for is fairness.
Great point. This whole bill is designed to send our country in a certain direction using tax policy. How about $2 trillion worth of new taxes, Louis?
Well, and the problem is it sends this country further toward having the working poor in America subsidize and pay for the benefits of the rich. Now, during the Obama-Biden administration, I was shocked to find out that during that 8 years, for example, black homes in America, they lost 30% of their net worth during the 8 years of Obama. In September of 2013, Obama admitted their policies that were in place that 95% of the income America was going to the top 1%. The rich got much richer and the poor got much poorer. And we're seeing the same thing now that it's Biden at the top. And it's devastating to America. This inflation, the increasing taxes, and the cost of energy, it's inconvenient to the mega wealthy. But it devastates the poor in America, the lower middle class. And that's who these people are just very comfortable in sticking it to while their rich friends get along great.
AOC's draft should have said subsidize the rich.
Yeah.
Well, this is, I'll show for everybody and anybody that wants to see, and you folks as well. This is the current gross domestic product, right? And you can see it's at 0.5 down, by, that's the growth rate. And so.
Do you remember what it was under Trump?
And we were looking at 5, not 0.5, 5 and 6, 3.5. We were a growing economy. The point I think that needs to be made here is there's no bank the federal government's going to get this money that we're going to spend. We're going to print it. And when we print it, that increases inflation. Yes. So the cost of every good that you buy, whether it's your gas at the pump, whether it's the chicken dinner that you want to have on Friday night, or if you're going somewhere, you want to try and plan a vacation, a rental car if you can get one. If you need to buy a new car because your current car, like mine, has 300,000 miles on it, you got to start thinking about it at some point. All that stuff is going to cost you more. Every dollar we print makes you the value of your dollar less, and you're seeing it in inflation right now. So while we're talking about an increase in Social Security, right, payments are the largest increase in like 20 years or something like that, it's because they're factoring in how much the inflation is making you pay more for every single thing you have. And oh, by the way, even though it's 5.5% increase in Social Security, if you're getting the increase, inflation's at 7%. So you're still losing money. You're still not ahead. You're getting further and further behind. Inflation is taxation through another means. And what Andy and Louis and everybody here is talking about is spending trillions of dollars that just makes it harder for you to make ends meet.
With regard to the printing, it's been several years ago, but in a private meeting with some of our Treasury folks, I said, how much more money are we printing now than we did, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago? And I was told, well, it's not that much different than what we've been, a little. No. I said, but there's so much more money in the system now. And he said, oh, we couldn't possibly print all the money we are creating. They're not even bothering to print it anymore. They just create digits in the system.
It's a spreadsheet. It's on a computer program.
It's worth mentioning, too, about the spending, to bring it home a bit. Every boy or girl that's born today is born with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, over 100,000 in debt. That's just immoral. We're not even paying for this. Immoral. We're not even paying for this. We're putting it on the children being born. And in fact, it doesn't matter if you're black or white or Republican or Democrat. Your child is born with a massive debt. And that is not a partisan issue. I mean, I'm a conservative, but this is wrong for America to do this to our children. To our children. So you love children?
I need a big loan. I've got my children. Well, what is it for? Because I can't stop spending money. Well, what's your collateral? Well, my kids are going to sign it. They're going to pay it someday.
Well, as long as you voted beforehand, if the majority says so.
So as we are just about out of time, there's so much we've covered. I want to summarize. Of course, Senator Lee, thanks for him for being here, talking about his attempt to use Senate procedures to slow down and maybe even stop the implementation of an OSHA vax mandate, which, by the way, doesn't exist. I mean, there is no official mandate. So they're working on that. We've talked about the out of control spending of these spending packages, but we've focused on a lot of the bad policy. We've talked about the ramifications of not just the policy that's going to go on. We've talked about the inflation and the impact that we have. As we close out, last word from each of you, about 10 or 15 seconds, because this is really grinds me, and we could spend hours just talking about this. The federal government to become an absolute surveillance state. This bill facilitates that, as Lauren mentioned, with the $80 billion to hire IRS agents to enforce every policy that you're going to see here, but in particular, to look out and examine your banking transactions. Now think about that. They monitor everything over 10,000 today. they can't fully monitor them because there's so many transactions, just over 10,000. They're going to drop it down to $600. No way to monitor it. You get every 15 seconds, surveillance state. This bill, facilitate will start go, Louis, we'll go this way.
Well, for those that think that Biden's telling the truth when he says we're only going after the ultra wealthy, just remember what Andy just said. They're going to be monitoring $600 transactions. They're not going after the wealthy. They're coming after rank and file Americans, from the working poor to the lower middle class. They're coming after the people that are working hard.
Amen.
Yes, so I'm excited that Senator Lee has a plan there in the Senate, and whatever we can do to get that message out that we do need to defund the Department of Labor and OSHA if they are going to mandate these vaccines on employers and employees. But with this spending, this is the largest tax increase in American history. Nancy Pelosi is frustrated with the media because they aren't doing their job to promote it. They work so well with the White House. The White House says, we're working with Facebook, we're working with mainstream media to get information out. But the American people don't want it. That's the problem with this. And they're not grabbing a hold of that. And so I think we're doing a great job on messaging, and we need to continue to message. And people need to be contacting their representatives and their senators on this bill.
Well, I'd say the progressive left has pretty much taken over the Democrat Party. They want government control of every aspect of your lives, whether you take a vaccine, wear a mask, taxation policy. In order to have that government control, they need more surveillance, which is what they're pushing in this bill too, so they can watch everything you do. Those of us who believe in freedom want to push back against that. So between government control and freedom, and I hope most of this country supports our fights for their freedoms.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, everybody takes an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. This is the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which says that you shall not be subject to unlawful search and seizure without probable cause. Looking at every bank account based on $600, $10,000, or 1 cent without probable cause is unconstitutional, illegal, and should not be allowed to stand. And that's what we're all fighting against.
Amen. Great. Andy Biggs here, Chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. I've been joined by Scott Perry from Pennsylvania, Alex Mooney from West Virginia, Lauren Boebert, Colorado, and Louis Gohmert from Texas. The action item for all is to contact your U.S. senators and enjoin them to support the Marshall Amendment and the Lee plan to stop that. And then also let everybody you know about the fight against the vax mandate, as well as this outrageous spending plan and as we've tried to emphasize here, this attack on your fundamental freedom. And we'll keep you posted, and we'll keep fighting the fight because we know you'll keep fighting the fight with us.